Hey, everybody. Welcome to another episode of the Giant Zone podcast. We're your hosts, GM George, Steve the Banker, and yours truly, Fly Guy Carl. For those of you that are new to the show, what we do is we get together every week to talk anything and everything related to our beloved New York Giants. What's really special about our show is that we like to include you, our followers. So we've made an interactive platform for you to come on, join the discussion, ask any questions you have, or share any thoughts that you may have, and just join in the conversation. If you'd like to be on the show, or if you have a question that you'd like to have asked on the show, send us a DM to @Giants_Zone22. And if we use your question on the show, we'll make sure we mention who submitted the question. But keep in mind one thing, guys, this is all about you. You're what makes this show special, and you're the reason why we do this show. And our goal with this show is to create a community that all Giant fans would like to be a part of, and to give you all a platform to voice your opinions, ask questions, and just be part of this growing movement. So please keep following, and thank you all for your support. We really appreciate it. Switching gears, tonight's a special night in the Giant Zone. Tonight's our first night with a live guest. And our guest tonight is a good friend of the show and a good supporter of the show. He's actually become a very personal friend of mine just from our interactions on Twitter. And that guest tonight is Brian, or as he's known on Twitter, the Damned Llama. Brian, welcome to the show, buddy.
Thank you. It's an honor to be here, guys.
So good to have you part of it tonight, brother.
Thank you.
So Brian, we all gave a little background about who we are last week. So if you could, why don't you give us a little background about you, how you became a Giant fan, how long you've been a fan, and any Giant related or game day traditions that you and your family may have.
Absolutely. Well, again, thank you guys for having me. I'm 51, so I've been a fan. I was born in '70, so the first games I started to watch as a Giant fan that I remember are probably Craig Morton years, somewhere in the mid to late '70s, mostly Joe Pisarcik stuff and fumbles and things like that to Herm Edwards. But my grandfather, not even my great grandfather, saw the Giants in their first inaugural season in '25. He made my father a fan of the Giants. My father made me we were all born into Giants. We were born wearing Giant gear, so it was really never up for debate who we were gonna love. So I'm third generation Giant fan. I think probably I've watched 95% of the snaps as long as I can remember. My family is very well aware that Sundays or whenever there's a game on, they ask me in advance, what time's the game? We're not going to make plans. The kids can go do what they're going to do. And what time's the game? And then a lot of times I have to tell them, well, it's Monday night. We can't do anything then either. So that happens, of course. But I die Giants. Mark Bavaro is my favorite player. I think every football player should be just like Mark Bavaro. Like I said, man, everything is interesting to me regarding the Giants. I love great debate. And I'm looking forward to talking more with you guys and see if I could inject some 51-year-old info. Thanks again.
So Brian, I gotta start off by saying I think your name, the Damned Llama, just made us no longer kid friendly. So thank you for that. I appreciate that.
No problem. No problem. It's whatever. It is what it is.
So let's get into this, guys. And before we get into some of the questions, last week the talk was who's going to be our new offensive coordinator, which that was addressed later in the week. So today the news was that Wink Martindale is now our defensive coordinator. So, the off season of change continues, and it's got a really good positive vibe to it right now. At least for me, it does. I think many people feel the same energy. They may not agree with all the picks, and that's okay. But I think everybody's got the same feeling of the positive energy and the new direction going forward. And I know I'm really excited about it. And again, with that, there's a lot of questions that people have, a lot of things that people want to see addressed. So let's kind of get into it right away. And Brian, why don't you kick us off here tonight with the guest? What's the question you have?
Yeah, thanks, Carl. So, since we've gotten new coaches, things have changed. And what I mean by that is Shane has said we need $40 million of net cap for next year. That's a very tough situation right now. There's a lot of debate over how we should go about getting that. I have my own opinions on that. Things have even changed just as of today, in my opinions, based on who we hired on the for defensive coordinator. So I'd like to ask you guys what you think the best options are for developing some of that 40 million in cap. What's your best ideas for that?
All right, I'll start it off. I've been looking at a lot of the free agents that are out there right now. And in the free agents that I see, I could see a savings of about 28.3, and that's just in free agents. Okay. Now we need to get to 40. I understand that. So we're, about another 12 million short of that. I don't know if all of these guys are going to go or not. I think there's going to be some restructures. There's going to be some trades, which is also going to knock some money off. So look, Shane's going to have to be aggressive in his approach. We know that. Who eventually stays, who eventually gets traded, who eventually gets reworked. None of us have that crystal ball. I think he's going to be aggressive. He's already shown a tendency to be aggressive. So, guys, George, what do you got? What are you thinking on that?
Well, going on that, I mentioned this last week. I said there's a lot of things that are going to happen that are going to break people's hearts. And that's just something we're all going to have to deal with. Now, Shane, I don't know, he seems like a good guy. He seems to be respected around the league. I don't know how many friends he has who are GMs, assistant GMs, or front office people on other teams, but he's going to have to look to make these major changes. And he's going to have to hope that if he does put someone up for a trade, that he can get something in return, whether it's a draft pick or a player on a cheaper salary that will, help not only to, help this team kind of grow, but, also just not just put us in such a situation to where we're forcing ourselves come the draft. Now, I'm going to go ahead and tell you, last week, Carl, you mentioned Blake Martinez, and I know that I said that he was going to get restructured. I'm not going to lie, I'm starting to rethink that a little bit. I have a feeling that he's going to be a cap casualty. I would love for him to get restructured. I would love to see him stay, but there's a definite possibility that he could be a cap casualty. I know we all love Devontae Booker, and while he's not a big hit in the books, he could be a casualty as well. You look at Sterling Shepard, he'll be gone. Evan Ingram, he'll be gone. Kyle Rudolph, he'll probably be another one that will go. Riley Dixon, the punter, there's probably a very, very good chance he'll be gone as well. Julian Love, who I think is the great thing about Julian Love is he's a multi-positional player, but again, he may just end up being a cap casualty. He was not drafted by Shane. Shane doesn't know him. And, while we're not that deep in the secondary position, we do have guys in the secondary position. We have safeties and we have corners, and he could just end up being a cap casualty. And then you look at trades. There could be a couple of trades that are going to break people's hearts. And I know we talked about this earlier, but I'm going to go ahead and throw the name out there. And that's James Bradbury. There's a very good chance he could be on the trading block. And we'll just have to take that hit as well. This is definitely, you feel this sense of hope because we've brought guys in here, coordinators, coachings, and front office that are really just that you just feel that they are just so smart and they know what they want to build and there's no questions about it. But the sadness comes in with the fact that there are good players that are going to leave, which is really going to hurt us next year. Now, Steve, I'm going to let you keep going with this topic and just tell us what you feel.
Yeah. So, Brian, I have some real specific responses. Sterling, well, first of all, Evan Ingram already is gone. He's not on the roster. His contract's actually up, so he's gone. Sterling Shepard, it's not a question of how, but a question of when. If we cut him before June 1st, it's 4.5 million. After June 1st, it's 8.5. I think they're going to cut him before because we can use that money to sign a backup quarterback or whatever. I mean, it's unfortunately the timing of it. We've seen that happen the past couple of years. Kyle Rudolph's gone. It's 5 million. I mean, that's a lot of money for a guy that, I mean, we could have a whole discussion about Kyle Rudolph, but I think he's gone. Riley Dixon, 2.9 million. We saw them just sign a punter from Cleveland who's not very good, but I mean, you can see they're already starting to think about adding competition. I mean, to me, that's a no-brainer. Darius Slayton is somebody nobody talks about. 2.6 million. That's a lot of money for a guy that may not even be our fourth best wide receiver anymore. I know he was really good. DJ's first year, his first full year. I mean, they had magic together, but he led the NFL in drops. I mean, that's been one of the big topics this past season is what the heck happened to this kid? Right. Not my problem. I think he's gone. Booker's 2 million against the cap. I think Georgia hit the nail on the head with him. He turned out to be a really nice player. I think a lot of us wanted him to play over Saquon. It was like given his productivity between the tackles and Saquon with all his dancing. But you never know. To your point, it's new staff, new regime, 2 million for a guy that we could get a 6th-round draft pick to probably play or fit. Anyway, we can have that conversation later. The two guys that I'm interested to hear what you think about my thoughts are, and one of them kind of echoes what George was saying. On the podcast last week, I talked about Blake Martinez being restructured and Bradbury. I was wrong on Bradbury, and here's why. You can't restructure a guy that's on his final year. There's nothing to restructure. I was actually wrong about that, and I didn't realize he was on his last year. You cut him, it's 12.1 million. There's a lot of dead cap money there with Bradbury. Last week, I made a statement, and I stand by it. We have, with him and Adoree', a great pair of corners. Okay, he wasn't a Pro Bowler last year like he played at the level year before. I love Bradbury, but I mean, that's a lot of money on the cap. So that's number one. And number two, my final thought in response to your question is Blake Martinez, if we cut him, it's 8.5 million. That's a lot of money. And I think that's one of the things they're going to be going back. I think the key is the ACL. Blake already restructured in 2021. Actually, Bradbury restructured twice in 2021.
Yes.
So they could ask Blake to restructure again. Here's the cool thing that I did some research because I'm no cap expert. They can add a voidable year on because Blake's contract is not up this year. He still has time left. So what you can do is you can add a voidable year that will save 3.42 million according to some cap experts I read. And I made this comment last week, and here's where I'll end it. Middle linebackers, man, they don't fall off trees like that. Tackling machines. I think the key with Blake, and I got a man crush on him. I love that kid. But what's it like coming back from his ACL? Everybody recovers differently. We saw that with Saquon this year. I'd be interested to hear what you have to say. To me, the two big ifs are Blake and Bradbury. I think I was wrong on Bradbury. I think Bradbury, I'm sad to say, may be going. Blake, what do you think?
I love Blake Martinez. So if there's a way to keep him, I want to see them keep him. Short and sweet. I'd like to see him stick around. And I think he wants to be here. I really do. Brian, what do you think?
I got to tell you, with Blake, that guy was so hungry just to get back on the darn sidelines, if you recall. He couldn't wait to get on the sidelines. We fill up a team of guys like him. You know, he's going to be a coach one day. He's that kind of guy. And I would love to keep him. Probably number one on my list to keep. To me, it's about the injury. When we have to decide whether or not he's going to be a casualty or not, it may not coincide with the injury status. I got to tell you, I want to keep him, but I just don't know about Blake yet. What Bradbury is really the conversation for me. And then he was restructured. Steve, he's $21 million. I believe it would be a cap, a dead cap of 9. Does that sound about right, Steve? You would know. I think it's around 9 mil.
Yeah, I mean,
Ballpark,
So
yeah.
so the net's like 12. But here's the thing. I wanted him before Wink was hired. But now that Wink is hired and we anticipate a little bit more blitzing or a little bit more quarterback pressure, hopefully, it's going to make those battles, one-on-one battles, that much more important. And the thing about Blake, I know it's 9 million, but we're going to be chasing that position for years. If we're going to be chasing, finding the next guy to buckle down on the other team's best wide receiver for a long time. And as far as I'm concerned, I'll go by statistics. In 2020, he appeared to play better than he did last year. But here's the facts of the matter. In 2020, the Giants had a top 10 pressuring quarterback defense. Last year, they had a bottom 5 pressuring the quarterback defense. And yet Bradbury in 2000 was letting up 61% of the passes his way. And last year, this past season, he was letting up 62% of the passes his way. Based on the fact that there was so much less pressure on the quarterback, I have to anticipate that he probably in a lot of ways even played better. Maybe it doesn't sell our eyes, but I actually think he may have played even better than he did based on the fact we just had no pressure at all anywhere. And that's a huge difference for me. I think Stevie said they can't restructure him, but whatever the situation is, I hope there's a way they can keep him. I would be very upset, but I do understand 9 mil or whatever the net is a lot. I'm for keeping him. That's all I have to say about him, and try to figure out, how to create more money around it.
I'll just say one thing, and then I know we need to move on. Robinson, the 3rd round pick.
Mhm.
He was supposed to be just a slot. We had him down here at UCF, Carl, right? Like, I don't know if you ever saw him in college.
Yeah.
Strong, beast, put him in the box, slot, whatever. You know what they did with him? You saw when Adoree was hurt, he was playing out on the boundary. He was the one doing man-to-man, and he held up.
Yes.
I mean, he
Yeah,
had a
better.
couple of, against wide receiver ones, he had a couple of, but if you really watch,
But look at the wide receiver ones, right?
so I'm just saying, we don't know. They may look at it and say, listen, we can get a guy cheap in free agency. We can get a draft pick. I mean, none of us really know what, and they may say, man, it's just how the league works. It's the way the roster construction is. 12 million. I don't know. The more I think about it, the more I'm coming to George's side on that.
Yeah.
And Brian, in closing on that, I think you hit the nail on the head. Yes, Bradbury's numbers were probably down, and it looked like his productivity was down, like he just wasn't as good. But I agree with you. I think the lack of a pass rush had a big part in that, a huge part in that. When these quarterbacks have time, it's hard to stay with these receivers for a long period of time.
Yeah.
So I think that was a great point you made. All right. So we've answered that. So Steve, why don't you hit us with a question?
So I got one this week that I've been thinking about a lot. We discussed on last week's podcast, Shane has already said, and Brian, you just refreshed our memory about the 40 million he wants to get under this year. That will require a ton of cuts, restructuring, fine. Let's say he gets close to that. Right now, per Spotrac, which is the site that a lot of people is like kind of the Bible for cap and cap management, and we're 28 out of 32, not in a good way, right? We're over 10.3 million over the cap. We'll need money to sign 9 draft picks, half of which, by the way, are in the top 100. We got numbers 5, 7, 36, 67, 80. People don't realize it. And we have some awesome picks, but they're going to cost money to sign. That leaves, if he does accomplish 40 million, like I found about 30 million with what I was saying before, but if he goes down 40, that only leaves us maybe some money to sign mid-level and lower-level free agents. So here's my question. We have needs all over the roster. Obviously, the draft is going to help us determine how many of those we plug up. Free agency augments that. So what free agents would you like us to prioritize? Do you have 2 or 3 that you can identify? I have 3 in particular that I've targeted, but I'm first curious if you all have any positions in there for any players that, based upon the free agents available, that you'd like us to go after.
Go ahead, guys. I don't, and Steve, I will preface that by saying I haven't even done that level of research yet. I've been so just kind of looking at our own free agents and how do we get to a point where we can sign free agents. I'll have that ready for next week's show, but right now I don't.
And I don't either, not necessarily because the research hasn't been there, but because, again, just like I mentioned last week, I don't know how we're going to save up this. I don't know how we're going to get rid of this 40 million. I almost feel like it's going to be one of those situations where technically it's going to be a recycling deal. I feel like we example, Solder, Rudolph, Ingram, gone, right?
Yeah.
Recycle, draft them. And as far as free agents go, you're just going to, I think we're going to have to, we're definitely not going to make this big splash. We already know that. And this is kind of mixing this segment up with the last segment. I think that while many people were excited last year when we signed Galladay and all these things, I think what we didn't look at, because we were so hopeful just to get that playmaker for Daniel Jones, we didn't look at the just bad contract that he received. Between him overpaying for, just my personal opinion, overpaying for Rudolph. I know, Carl, you and I talked about it last week as well. I didn't think we should have taken Ross, but you explained to me that Ross was one of our, number one receivers. I can't see us doing anything in free agency unless you get a guy that was cut by another team. Mm-hmm. I don't see us going and signing a guy basically unless he's off the streets. But go ahead, Llama, talk to me.
No, a lot of it's going to have to do with who we have to get rid of and what our needs are. I mean, I would love to bring in a guy like Scherf for the offensive line. He's going to cost a fortune probably. He's no youngster, so he's out. So so a lot of these free agents that I want, we can't afford.
Right.
I think we're going to have to spend money on the backup this year.
Right.
It's not going to be cheap. I think that's one position we got to spend some money on. I mean, if Daniel Jones, most likely he's going to be our quarterback, we're going to have someone who can play football behind him. Have to. Our linebacker situation is another. Can we find a couple of inexpensive guys? Can we find a center if we don't get Linderbaum, which would kill me? But if we don't, can we find a center? Can we, maybe Paradis can come over from Carolina. Maybe they'll take Linderbaum from. I mean, there's some options at center. We need a linebacker. We may need another corner. I would sign Love, by the way. I just want to go back to what you said, Steve. I will try to work with Love if we could. So there's a few positions. A lot of it's just contingent right now on who's going to be cut and what our draft's going to look like. Because I anticipate a lot of youngsters on this team next year. A lot of them.
And Steve,
sorry, I can't be more specific.
And Steve, maybe the answer to your question is it's too premature to really look at it yet. And I think we need to see where we're cutting the fat first. I mean, it's nice to have guys to, a wish list, to your point. I don't know if we can really define that yet, though. Just a thought.
Well, I have a wish list. I had 3 players, but we could talk about that another time.
Well, go ahead, lay it on us.
What are your players? I just want to hear them.
Who are you thinking?
So it's out there. It's completely public. There's no mystery about it. All the guys that could be signed as a backup quarterback are out there. Yeah. You guys don't need to wait for anything. You can look who's available. The amount of money that they're estimating for their contracts, and the one that I'd love is Andy Dalton. There's a lot, and this is a huge year for free agent backup quarterbacks, guys. Just so you know, you may want to take a look. There's literally 15 really good backups. The problem is half of them think they can be a starter. Yeah. Literally. Marcus Mariota, Mitchell Trubisky. I could go on and on. Jacoby Brissett. Guarantee you he thinks he could be. So there's quite a few. I like Andy Dalton. He's time tested. He's on the back 9 of his career. He's been to the playoffs. He's had success. He's at that point in his career, and he's also shown that he can mentor younger guys. We just brought in Davis Webb. We know the story there. we could talk about him later, but he's going to be the number 3 quarterback. There's been a lot of press today about the role he really played in Buffalo, and that's interesting, actually. But we need a backup. And Llama, I agree with you. That's important. So for me, I've already looked. There's no magic bullet that's all going to suddenly reappear. I think the quarterbacks that are out there are who's out there. I don't think there's going to be like some amazing potential backup that gets released. That's just my personal opinion. So Andy Dalton, I've actually looked at all the free agent offensive linemen. Mark Lewinsky is the guy that I've identified. He was one of the starters for Indianapolis. He was drafted by Seattle. He's the 2nd highest grade on the Colts offensive line.
Yeah.
Their offensive line was in tatters last year. Quentin Nelson got hurt and he stepped up. He had a PFF grade of 71.1. So you got a guy there who's a hard worker. He's tough. He loves to hit the weights. There's YouTube videos of him pushing cars. That's a type of guy that none of you probably ever heard of. And guess what? I didn't hear of him earlier this week until I started doing my research. Llama, that's the type of guy they're going to sign. That's the type of guy you can bring in on a reasonable contract. We can't just start 4 rookies next year, right? I hope we draft 4 guys. We can't start 4 rookies. We need, it's a fact. They're going to sign offensive linemen.
Yeah.
To me, Scherf's going to need like 12 to 15 million. Anyway, we can go on and on. And then the 3rd guy, I'm going to say it. We talked about him last week. I don't care. I want him back. Gibral Peppers. He is ranked as the 14th best safety in this free agent class. I couldn't believe it. But there's some phenomenal free agent safeties this year. He's coming off a major injury. He's a Jersey boy. He loves being here. He loves playing here. I don't think he liked the last regime. I could see him coming back on a 1-year prove-it deal. I know we talked about it last week. Wink Martindale, that defensive scheme, he wants a strong secondary. He wants playmakers. He wants thumpers. So anyway, that's my wish list. I agree with you guys. It's early, but it's early for the draft too. And we're talking about that. So that's what I was thinking about with free agency. I was starting to get excited about it. The fact that Shane's talked about cutting 40 million. So
Yeah. Interesting. Good question, guys. George, what do you got for us?
Well, I'm going to go back to Steve real quick and say, Dalton, with our offensive line and that brick house who can't move 2 inches, I don't see him surviving long behind our O line. But
if he has to play though, and DJ's hurt every week, you want a guy who at least can win 2 or 3 games, right?
Right. Yeah. My question kind of got changed a little bit because we now have a DC, Wink. And now my question has been answered because I know Wink is very, very aggressive. And I'm going to sound like a little bit of a two-face now because I think that Blake Martinez would be perfect for his defense. And I truly believe that as aggressive as he is, if you have Blake Martinez, middle linebacker, you have Roche and Ojulari out there, and if we can bring in either by draft or by trade or by free agency, what have you, bring in a middle linebacker, I mean not a middle, a nose tackle, or any kind of D lineman that can be aggressive, that will, because apparently we learned last year, Leonard Williams needs a strong defensive lineman to make his plays. We all learned that last year. Tomlinson leaves and all of a sudden Williams disappears. I think the aggressiveness of this defense could be just unbelievable. So I guess my question would be, is this, do we have the roster, and I'm talking all around defensive roster, to fit Wink's style of defense? Or do we need to keep our expectations low this year, this upcoming season, and save it for one more draft and one more offseason to really see what he will bring to the table? And Carl, I'm going to bring it to you.
My feeling is this. I can go a couple different ways with this. I think he's got to do his own evaluation of the players to see who he feels fits his system and who doesn't. I think part of that is also going to be going back to what both Shane and Dayball said in their press conferences, was building a system around the talent that's currently on the roster.
Right.
So I think you're going to see a lot of, look, we all agree that there's going to be a lot of turnover. How much we can turn it over, it remains to be seen. But I think a lot of it is going to be evaluating the players. I think when you're really going to see the benefits of a Wink Martindale year 2. Look, let's be honest. We touched on this last week. The next year is not going to be about wins and losses. Next year is going to be about, let's kind of just show that we've got a plan and let's show some progress. And I think if we get that, we'll all be happy. So do I think he's got the roster, the talent on the roster to run a successful system? My gut says no, not really. And again, I'm just going to go back to 4-13. Yes, there were injuries. Okay, every team had injuries. 4-13, guys. We didn't win with what's on the roster, but that's my take. Brian, you're shaking your head. What do you think?
Yeah, no, I think we're short on talent. You know, our defense, like I said earlier, from 2020 to 2021, as far as the aggression is concerned, went down significantly. Even a guy like Ojulari towards the end of the season's kind of started to trail off a little bit as time went on. I don't see that we have it. The good thing is that, and I hope fans appreciate this, that we can't look at this as a next year thing. As Carl said, it's not about our record next year. Are we making strides? Are we being somewhat more aggressive with whoever we have and whoever we're going to bring in? We just don't. I don't see the talent to be able to run a Wink defense right now the way he wants to run it. Now the real question is, can Wink change things a little bit? And so instead of round pegs and square holes, can he see where the talent does lie on the players he's going to have, and whether or not he can maximize the talent that is there or will be there for now anyway, until he builds up the system he wants to build and the talent that he wants to eventually have to be able to run his system of aggressive defense. But right now, no, he's the right guy to run it. He wasn't my first pick for a defensive coordinator, but he's here. So right now, I'm on a 2-3 year plan. I think that in the next 2 to 3 years, we're going to see that aggressive Wink Martindale defense that we expect to see. And that's where I'm going to go with this. Steve?
Steve?
So I think the simple answer is no. If you really watch Baltimore, my best friend's from Baltimore. I unfortunately have to watch a lot of Baltimore games. But it's been a pleasure because, they've been great and they've been fun to watch with Lamar. But they've been just a factory, kind of like the Steelers were in the 90s and early 2000s, just a factory at producing front 7 players. If you guys literally pay attention to free agency every year, there's always a guy. You know what I'm talking about? There's always a guy in the front 7, an edge from Baltimore. How is that? They're not always first round picks. Granted, Ozzie Newsome was the godfather of that. And then the guys who followed him are just really good at talent evaluation. They know how to draft, but they know how to coach. They know how to teach. They know how to get that out of them. Well, that was Wink and his staff. So do we have those guys? No, we don't. I think we got players. I do. But here, let me give you a counter to that. I was not a huge Patrick Graham fan. As a man, I love him. He's smart. He's loves his players. He supports his players. You ever heard his conference talking about Lorenzo Carter? Who the hell wouldn't want to play for a guy like that, right? So smart. But that's why I didn't want Vic Fangio. Vic Fangio is brilliant. Amazing defensive coordinator. But the concept is smoke and mirrors, sub packages. And here's the problem I've always had with that, because I played football when I was a kid. A lot of you guys have played football. I'm just a big believer. I coached youth sports when keep it simple. These are professionals and I get that. But I think one of the things, if we've paid attention each offseason, was during the 2 years we had Patrick Graham, the rookies, it took a while, right? Xavier McKinney didn't exactly come in and that because, and they've talked, if you've watched and listened to player interviews, players have talked about how his scheme, that's when Logan Ryan came here, it was a blessing because, oh my God, he's able to help the guys and understand. It's a lot. I mean, you can't just slot a free agent in week one. Bernard McKinney, the linebacker, was the rare exception where a guy just came in and right away was like, wow, he's good. It's hard. Wink Martindale keeps it real simple. And the second thing I was going to say is I'm just a believer in that pressure defense, because when you pressure and you affect the quarterback, you get turnovers. Turnovers, Tom Coughlin used to say, and Bill Parcells before him, turnovers wins games. You manage turnovers, your win percentage is going to go up. So it's fun to watch, but it also leads to a lot of more scoring opportunities because you're getting the ball back. That happens with a pressure defense. Unfortunately, our secondary, whether it was Bradbury, who again I loved, Adoree, who's never met an interception that he liked. I mean, we don't have a secondary that creates a lot of turnovers. Our best guys are safeties at getting turnovers. That says something. I'm just being honest. We don't have Deion Sanders back there. So how do you get turnovers, guys? The front seven, and that's okay. I don't think we have the players. I also love his system because it's predicated upon not bend, don't break like Patrick Graham, Vic Fangio. His system is based upon pressuring the quarterback, getting turnovers, and keeping it simple for guys. So my final thought is I'm actually excited about the draft, even though Brian, George, we don't have the guys we need yet, because his system is one where rookies can come in and have success. I know Ojulari had a lot of sacks this year, but most rookies don't come in to the old system we had and have success right away. I'm excited about Wink Martindale.
And I'm really glad. I really like these answers, guys. I really do. I'm just going to back it up just a little bit. I will concede to the fact that, yeah, our secondary is not a turnover machine. And even when we seem to be right there to get a turnover, we drop the ball. I mean, we dropped the ball. But going back, I'm not going to ask this question. We'll save this question for another time, but it is a question that is on my mind. And it's only simply this. Hold on one second. Good night, son. Go. Bye. That is that, we're talking about the fact we didn't get enough pressures, and Llama, you brought up the fact that even towards the end of the season, Aziz didn't get that many pressures. I felt like really, even as the season went on, that was more of a scheme issue than it was a player issue. I feel like we were saying, we went to the bend, don't break, last 2 minutes of the halves. I mean, we just ran into that problem again where teams were just scoring on us, whether it was a touchdown or a field goal.
Every
and
game.
That wasn't necessarily the players on the field. That was the fact that the players on the field were told to cover, not to attack. Now, one thing I will say is maybe Patrick Graham, he felt like he was forced to do that because he didn't have Tomlinson in the middle anymore to help get those outside guys, to get in and get to the quarterback, while Tomlinson pushed the QB out of his comfort zone and made him move right or left. And then there was a Leonard Williams there to sack him last in 20. He didn't have that this year. He just wasn't getting pressure up the middle. We didn't have a great run defense, all those things. I feel like, was it scheme? I think that's why I told you guys in the beginning, I'm so excited, and I'm going to leave it at this. I'm so excited if Blake Martinez does come back, and I'm completely wrong about the trade or anything like that. If he does come back, I love the fact that he's going to be in an aggressive defense, and he's going to have an opportunity to have Aziz Ojulari, who I think loves attacking. I don't think he loves staying back and covering, or staying back and watching for the run and covering holes. I think he loves attacking. I think Roche is the same way, and I think he can play the opposite side. If you've got those two guys on the outside, and then you've got Blake Martinez, I really think you've got a good recipe. You don't have the whole menu, but you have a good recipe to start cooking something. And I'm just going to leave it at that.
I'll close that question with this. What I'm really looking forward to this year out of Wink is I want to see if he can maximize the talent that's currently on the roster. And I want to see how that responds to him. Again, I don't believe we'll see the full effects of his system until 2023. I just want to see some semblance of a good system in place that we can continue to build on year over year. If I get that, I'd be happy and say it was a great sign. And
There you go.
that's my take on that. So instead of me asking a question of my own, I've received a lot of questions from followers. So I'm going to go down the list and start asking some of those. And the first one that I have kind of relates to what we were just talking about with Wink Martindale. And the question comes from Fa Q, one of our followers. And thank you for sending this to us. The question is, now that we've signed Wink Martindale, do we change our strategy and look at an elite cornerback, giving the system that he likes to run? You know, he does like the blitz. He likes to be aggressive. What are your thoughts, guys, about adding, let's say, one of the top 8, if we can get them, cornerbacks in the draft? And
in the draft, just to clarify.
Yes, sir. In the draft. So, Brian, why don't you start with that?
I'm going to go back to what I said before. I think we have one. You know, they're not going to, whether or not they keep him, I don't know. So I think if it's about having an elite cornerback, there's one, like I said, on the team that had 1 percentage point more receptions against him in a much worse defense rushing the quarterback. I mean, he's basically unchanged. We have him. Is there a way to work his number again? Steve, I think you said they can't rework him as far as adding an elite corner. If they can't rework him, they can't rework him. As far as adding a elite corner, that was my premise, to just keep what we have. But, running out of time, I'm just going to leave it at that. I don't know enough about the other 8 to comment yet.
Well, Brian, let me just kick it back to you. So the question is now that Wink was hired, do they change their strategy and look at drafting an elite cornerback? Do you think that because of his influence, they may change and look to add one in the draft?
Yeah, it depends where, who's available, of course. I think that listen, we can all admit they're most likely going to need a stud cornerback somewhere. Mm-hmm. Whether or not, it's really hard for me to say this minute because I'm so stuck on what we already have. But I don't think they're going to draft an elite cornerback in the first couple of rounds. Let's put it that way. I just don't see it. Not right now.
There you go.
Okay.
Steve?
No. It comes down to roster construction. We've been making this mistake for a decade, guys. Mm-hmm. It's enough.
Exactly.
It's enough. How about we do this? Let's go draft 5 corners and 5 wide receivers. Oh my God. Oh, we have all these great players. Guess what? We're never going to move the ball. We're never going to stop the ball because you got to construct a roster the right way.
Right.
If you think we should be drafting corners and wide receivers every year in the first round, go move in with Dave Gettleman. Go move in with Jerry Reese. That's not how you build a team. Right. I know it's not sexy. I know nobody wants to hear it. That's why we're where we are today.
Mm-hmm.
Why where we are.
Great.
James Bradbury, do any of you know where he was drafted by Carolina?
Ooh.
5th round, wasn't it?
Yeah, that's what I was just going to say. 2nd round.
2nd round, really?
Wow.
Yeah, you can get a great corner in the 2nd or 3rd round. Oh, wait, we got one last year. Robinson, 3rd round. He's a young stud. Let the kid play. Do I want us to draft a corner if the value's there in the 3rd round, let's say? Not really, but I trust this. I trust these guys. Yeah. They know talent. And if they see a really good potential corner, because this is an unbelievably deep draft in the trenches at tight end, George, at a number of positions because of all the seniors that came back because of the pandemic, yada, yada. Listen, go get them. But 1st round, we need edge. I love Roche. I love Ojulari. We need an alpha dog. We need a game changer. We need a younger Michael Strahan. We need an OC. We need a guy who's going to be the alpha along with Ojulari and Roche. Now, then you got your 3, right? We need edge. And maybe Ellison Smith is that because when we drafted Justin Tuck in the 3rd round, I believe, and OC in the 2nd, I didn't know anything about them back in the day. I mean, I watched those drafts. I was like, OC Manura. I want the other guy from Troy.
I remember doing that too.
Remember him, the Hall of Famer? So you can find guys, but I guess where I'll stop is you guys have seen me say this on Twitter a bunch the last month or two. You don't get a Jonathan Ogden by trading out of these high picks. You don't get a Hall of Fame tackle by, let's just keep trading down. Yeah, okay, keep trading down. Trade. You don't get anyone ever wonder how they get these guys? You got that high pick if the value's there, if they really think Neil from Alabama and he drops and he's that. I'm not saying we're going to have those, but everybody just keeps wanting trade. And that's where it's up to our talent evaluation. But if the players are there, you got to build from the trenches.
That's right.
You build a foundation and plug holes.
You got to.
Right.
No one ever won a Super Bowl by drafting just corners and wide receivers.
Everyone talks about trades. I don't know. It seems like it's all over Twitter. Everyone says, let's trade again. Let's trade again. Let's trade again. Why? We have 5 and 3 rounds.
I am open to trading our 7th pick, depending upon what we get back and who we get in the 5th. We could talk about that.
Yeah,
we'll talk about that another time.
Yeah.
I don't want to move up that 5th pick. Steve, I completely agree with you. Let's get an offensive lineman and then let's go.
And
George,
that's what I'm going to say as well. That's what I'm going to say as well. Is,
George, you happy with Andrew Thomas?
Absolutely.
Where was he picked?
Absolutely.
What pick?
First round. Yeah.
What if we traded down? Oh,
yeah. Right.
No, and
we got our left tackle.
Yeah, and I'm there too. No on the corner. I say I don't care if we leave the secondary exactly the way it is today.
Yeah.
Because it's not because I'm in love with every single player. My thing is just like Steve, mentioned, we got to build from the trenches.
Yeah.
We got to get that front 5 on OL. We got to get that, front 7 fixed on the D. And I guarantee you, even if he's the worst corner in the league, you have that front 7 right, he's going to look like at least a Pro Bowl player.
Exactly.
Because they're not going to be able.
Can I throw something back to you, George and Llama? Yeah. And Carl, I'm not ignoring you. It's just those two guys been talking about corners a lot. What about Rodarius Williams? That kid stumbled. Let me just say this. Corner is one of, if not the toughest position to transition from college to pros.
Oh, yeah.
Rodarius Williams, I'll give Gettleman credit on that. That kid played way above his head.
Mm-hmm.
He was an old rookie. Everybody knows the story about him, who his brother is, greedy and all that. But then he started playing lights out and then he got hurt.
Yeah.
Llama, I know you want to keep Bradbury. I want to keep Bradbury. I wish we could. George, I know you'd love to keep Bradbury. He started out where you are in Carolina. But we have some young corners, man.
I get that too. I mean, listen, we're most likely not keeping Bradbury. I hate to say it, it's killing me. We're most likely going to have to get rid of him. So yeah, Rodarius, we got guys that can hopefully fill in well. Yeah, I get it.
Carl, George, what do you guys think of Rodarius? He's part of the mix?
Next year, yes. Yes.
Yeah.
I think
absolutely.
his grade for this year is incomplete. So but the time that we had him, he showed enough promise where I think he gets a look for this year.
Absolutely.
He's got that sizzle, man. He was confident, right?
He stood out. I noticed him. When you notice somebody, that means they're doing something right or very wrong. He wasn't very wrong.
Yeah.
Agreed.
I'm not going to waste time coming. You guys said it all. Let's go on to the next question.
Brian, what do you have?
Man, let's just touch it, please. Let's just touch on Dable really quickly. Make this about Dable. All right. I know. It's been talked about. I just want to go on the record saying I was not a big fan, and this is why I'm bringing it up. Last week, Shane said, we're not really gung-ho about Dable calling the offensive plays. You guys heard it. It was in the news. It was all over the place. Most of the fans expected, let's get Dable. He's going to call the plays. He's going to hand it off over the next couple of years to another offensive coordinator. That's what a lot of people were assuming. What do you anticipate seeing now out of if he's not calling plays? Him and Kafka just going to constantly greet each other and figure it out?
I want to jump in on this because it's funny that you mentioned that, because I was asking last week about Dable calling plays, and I think my question was answered. Who's the offensive coordinator he brought in from KC, right?
Right.
Who called the plays in
Kafka, yeah.
KC? So that tells me right there
Yep.
that Dable's calling plays. And I think that now the players are just going to be developed, and then when they get out there on the field, they're going to hear Dable's voice in their ears. I think that's exactly the way it's going to go down. I mean, my question was answered as soon as they picked up the new OC.
Steve?
I agree and I disagree at the same time. Yes, two things can be true at the same time. First of all, Kafka wouldn't have come over if he's not eventually going to be an OC who calls plays. He had it too good there. He could have waited for an actual real opportunity. A guy like Kafka coming from that place, he had his pick. That's number one. Number two, you guys have been watching some of the interviews with Dable, and I've also been watching some of the other podcasts in Buffalo, just out of curiosity to see like what we do, some of the people talking about. There was an evolution, not just in Josh Allen, but there was an evolution in him because it was an evolution in Dable. And he's actually talked about that. He's talked about how his personality was kind of like Bill Belichick when he was in Miami, and he realized he can't be a jerk to his players. And now like the players came to the point where they were like, I would do anything for that man, because he changed how he treated the players. One of the other things he did is he changed. Last year, he was no longer up in the skybox. He was down on the field, and he wanted to have someone in the skybox, and he realized he can't do both. Mm-hmm. So I think he understands the value of having someone in the skybox during the game, right? I think he's gonna. So I think you're right, George. I think he's gonna call plays, but I only think it's gonna be that first year. I really do.
Oh, I don't think it's going to be forever. I just think it's going to be definitely going to be this year in Kafka, whose name just slipped my head. That's why I didn't mention it before. I just think that it's going to be an easier transition for him to come in, not calling plays, learn Dable, and then next year, maybe the next year and a half, it may not even be the beginning of 23. It may be mid-season of 23. He'll start slowly taking over and start calling plays. But yeah, the second Kafka got hired, I knew and again, this year, definitely Dable's calling plays.
I'm going to come at that two ways. First, I would not be surprised if you see Kafka calling plays at some point in 2022. He's got a very good resume, which we can dig into if we want. He was being groomed, from what they're saying, to eventually replace Andy Reid in Kansas City. So I would not be surprised if Daboll oversees the play calling. But I would, again, my thinking on that is Kafka may eventually get the play calling, and Daboll has the right to override him if he's not in agreement with the call. But I would not be surprised to see him doing more of it earlier than later.
And don't forget one thing, guys. The first drive of every game is scripted.
Right.
Oh yeah. Yeah.
They're gonna
20 plays or so are scripted. You're absolutely right.
So to your points, both, I think what you both are getting at, and Llama, I don't know if you agree. I think Kafka came over and kind of on the job training. And remember, he wasn't the OC over there. He's going to grow into the role. So they're going to game plan during the week. They're going to strategize. Yeah. And Carl, I think you're right. I think it's possible he could become the OC that calls plays by the end of the season.
Yeah. And I put this out there on Twitter today. Whether it's Kafka calling the plays, Daboll calling the plays, does it really matter, guys? Do we really care? As long as the offense is moving the ball, putting the ball in the end zone.
Hallelujah.
Who really cares who's calling the play, as long as the right plays are being called and they're being executed?
Right. And the great part about that is Dable's more than welcome to call the plays or really run the offense as well, because Wink, he'll have the defense.
Yes.
This head coach Dable is not going to have to worry about what is my defense doing.
Right.
with Wink running the show.
Sounds
And
advantage
while
to
we
the
know
man.
that there were a lot of good defensive coordinator candidates out there, how many of those candidates can you say that about? There's not a lot. There's not a lot.
True.
You know, I just wanted to add to that comment that, it's if Dable could go run around and just worry about the offense all day, we'd be in special teams. We'll deal with that. I mean, we could both envision Dable Chiefs, Dable Bills, Kafka Chiefs getting together, figuring out, wow, this play was great. This play was great. You know, in a perfect world, we can kind of see that happening and they figure out what the best plays are for the team that we have. I will say there's Burton today on Kansas City. Did you guys read what Burton said about Kafka today? Any of you?
No.
You could go read about it, but he said the guy is a stud. He said he commands a room. The players respect him. He does right plays. Without getting too detailed, you guys can all look it up. But what I've been hearing about Kafka, because I didn't know much about him, is only good things. Putting that next to, with Andy Reid and Dable and all that. I mean, we have a lot to look forward to, but I'm willing to give it time.
He's going to bring, I'm sorry, Carl, just to finish the thought, he's going to bring, for as creative as Dable has been, he isn't super innovative. He's good, but he wasn't like, oh my God, innovative. The Andy Reid program, if you will, is innovative. And where they're innovative is they take college plays and incorporate them. So for example, that toss that Mahomes does to Kelsey, the tight end, and he runs like up the middle. It's like, oh my God, where'd that come from? They did that with Tim Tebow at U of F back in the day. They will take college plays, put a twist to it, incorporate it into the spread offense that they run. So you got Dable, who's great. And he has this, we can get into how Dable thinks in his offense, because I've done some digging on that. We can talk about that another time. But Kafka coming in, I think, adds another layer, a twist of creativity. And that's why I'm excited about it, man.
We haven't really discussed Kafka much at length. And I did a little homework on him. And just a quick background about him. He was a 4th round pick in 2010 out of Northwestern. He was a quarterback. All right. He was hired by the Chiefs in 2017 as a quality control coach. All right. In 2018, he was promoted to quarterbacks coach.
Yep.
In 2018, Patrick Mahomes won an MVP. Now, some things that Reid has said about Kafka: he's got great leadership, he's got grit, and he likes to compete. So he's going to be aggressive. Under his watch, while he was at KC, they went to 4 consecutive championship games, 2 Super Bowls, and 1 championship. All right. Their passing game rankings while he was the quarterback's coach: 3rd, 4th, 1st, 2nd. Influences in his coaching career: Pat Fitzgerald at Northwestern, Doug Peterson, and Andy Reid and Eric Bieniemy. Now, do I expect the Giants to automatically come up with a top 5 passing game this year? No. But do I think we've got someone that could eventually get us there with the right players? Yeah, I think he was a solid hire. I think we did really, really good with him.
Let me give you food for thought. If we were the 15th ranked offense last year, we would have made the playoffs.
Yeah, very true, Steve.
And granted, new defense next year, new coordinator, everything's changing. I'm just saying, we didn't even need to be a top 5 offense. We could have made the playoffs, for crying out loud,
Yeah. So, guys, any closing thoughts quickly? Anybody have anything you guys want to close with?
Steve, go first.
No, don't put the spotlight on me.
All right, then take it, Llama. Llama, you take it.
Llama says, I'm going to make this really easy. First of all, before I leave, let me thank you 3 guys for allowing me on. I'm honored. One day when you guys have millions of followers, the first trivia question is going to be, who the heck was your first guest, right? Yeah. Learn it and love it. It's the Llama. And thank you guys for everything. And fans, you got to give it time. When I started to watch the Giants, there wasn't social media. We read the newspapers. We got to make a phone call to the radio station to listen in. Just give it a little bit of time this time around. All right. And I think that we'll all be happy. Just progress is good enough.
Hey
Thank you.
would Parcells have taken us to a Super Bowl if social media was around in his first 3 years?
Oh, forget it. I mean, forget it. He would have been. What about Coughlin and Eli? They would have been fired already before too, right? They would have both not been Giants for year 3. So yeah, everything has changed, but just give it time, guys. Give it time.
Steve, what do you have in closing? Anything?
I actually couldn't have said it better than that, man. It's been a wild couple weeks. I think I've been using the phrase on Twitter, buckle up, buckle in. We've had so much change as Giants fans, but you know what? 5 Super Bowl appearances, 4 Super Bowl wins in my lifetime. We've been spoiled, and that's the truth. And we have to can't take it for granted. We're from the greatest city on earth, and therefore we have high expectations of this franchise. It's one of the 5 great franchises, but Llama, I think it hit on the head. Be patient, give these guys a chance, give them the benefit of the doubt. And I look forward to the coming weeks and Llama, our interactions with you, hopefully continuing. I hope you stay engaged with us. We value your opinion and everybody else's.
Where else would I go?
Yeah, man.
There you go.
There's just
Preach it, brother.
to be excited.
Yeah.
George, what do you have?
Well, I'm going to start off with, my closing comments. I want to thank Llama for joining us tonight. It was a blast.
Yeah.
And I look forward to interacting with you more on Twitter as we have been. I also want to thank, and I do apologize to many of you who may have DM'd some questions and we didn't get to them tonight. I can assure you that we're going to go through these. We're going to respond to you, and we look forward to interacting with you as well. Because like we said, this is all about the Giants family. We're family here, man. And Steve said, Steve, Llama, you both said be patient. I'm going to say be patient, but I'm also going to say keep an eye on that combine. It's deep this year. There's going to be a lot of players there. And don't be upset if our first 5 picks are offensive linemen, because we have got to rebuild those trenches, man. Again, Llama, thank you so much. Everybody who wrote in, thank you so much. We look forward to, just being out here for you some more. This is a blast. This is a lot of fun. And Carl, with that, I'm just going to pass it on to you, man. Night, everybody.
Awesome.
And I'm just going to echo something everybody has said, which, Brian, thank you so much. We appreciate your support, your friendship, and we really appreciate your input here tonight. You made the show really special tonight.
You're welcome. Thank you, guys. A lot of fun.
And I want to thank all of our followers. We thank you for your support. Please check out our shows. If you haven't already, please subscribe on the YouTube page. You doing that helps us to continue to bring more of these episodes to you. Again, follow us on Twitter at Giants_Zone 2022. And keep your eyes out. We're gonna have a special show next week, and we'll be announcing that shortly. And we're really, really excited about that as well. So thank you to all of you. We really appreciate the support. Brian, again, Steve, George, as always, great show. Thank you all. Good night, guys. We'll see you next week.